Hey, I'm John Tabler, and in this video today we're going to talk about probiotics and the magical properties that probiotics have to not only render toxins non-toxic, but also to sustain life and give longevity, unlock nutrients. So hit the like button down below and also the subscribe button, and let's get started. So I have an article, actually a number of articles and a study that actually show the ability of probiotics to completely take a known neurotoxin, a pesticide that's extremely toxic, and render it completely non-toxic, actually make it disappear. And I want to show you that. You know, probiotics are something that everyone pretty much worldwide had in their diet every day throughout all of history until about the last 90 years or so, as electricity and refrigerators came about. The method of preserving food, what was done before, which was fermentation, has pretty much been lost to everyone's ability to be able to accomplish that, and so nobody does that anymore. But the properties of fermented products, what they did in the human body, are amazing. And so we're going to start exploring that, and I'm going to show you many properties and reasons why you should actually add it. Make sure that you have it in your diet. I mean, there's a lot of talk now about probiotics, but the probiotics you buy in the store are only a note of this full spectrum of the probiotics that are in natural products when you make your own. And so we're going to do that. I'm going to show you how to do that. You can do it through many fermented products, but they don't even compare anything that you can buy in a pill form with the full spectrum probiotic that you get when you do a fermentation. You make sauerkraut, you make, well, wine was always original like that. It's no longer like that. Excuse me. And also sourdough bread, many different fermented products, cheese and milk, those were all done like that. I'm going to show you how that works. But for today, we're going to talk about the amazing ability of the probiotic action or fermenting action to completely wipe out a known toxin. And so in this article, it's about Chlorpyrifos. That's how you pronounce it. And so some of these pesticides and chemicals come up with the most tough names to pronounce. And it's almost like if you can't pronounce it, you really shouldn't get anywhere near it. But what it says is, for half a century, staple food crops in the United States, such as corn, wheat, apples, and citrus, have been sprayed with Chlorpyrifos, an organophosphate pesticide that can permanently damage the developing brains of children, causing reduced IQ, loss of working memory, and attention deficit disorders. Now, after a decades-long legal fight and under a court-ordered deadline, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has finally issued a final rule banning all food uses of Chlorpyrifos. So after many years, they actually just banned it right around August 18th. And so it's going to be banned now. They're going to phase it out. But let's go back and take a look at this. This is actually the bad guy here that I want to show you what actually happens when this is introduced into a fermentation. We'll get to that, but I want you to know first that this spray that has been used all over the world, but nationwide here since the 60s on all agricultural products pretty much, is part of a family of nerve agents developed during World War II. Chlorpyrifos, unsurprisingly, has incredible potential for harm. Unsurprisingly, research shows that exposure to this pesticide can increase the risk for behavioral issues and serious neurological damage in children, including ADHD, developmental delays, and lower IQs. Scientists and doctors consider these neurological effects to be permanent, irreversible, and lifelong. Studies have also shown that children exposed to Chlorpyrifos and other closely related pesticides face greater risk of developing asthma-like symptoms and diminished lung function. So they've known for a long time. In fact, in 2000, they banned this chemical for residential use in any way, but yet they still let it be sprayed on foods. So what ended up happening was they let that go on for so long. Pull up this article here. Again, this says Chlorpyrifos is a neurotoxic pesticide in the organophosphates class of chemicals that were first developed by the Nazis for chemical warfare. And this is what's being used to spray for pesticides for bugs on wheat crops and everything else. And so when it comes down on this article, it says all food exposures exceed safe levels, with children 1 to 2 exposed to levels of chlorpyrifos that are 140 times what EPA deems safe. Of course, there's no safe level of chlorpyrifos. It's just been on our crops for many, many years. Here's a showing of how much has actually been used nationwide. So the light pink small circles are 1 to 1,000 pounds, and the 100,000 pounds are the bigger circles right here. So these big circles here, that's in Kansas, it's in California, but all over, we're talking just tons. And when you go to Wikipedia, you can see that EPA estimated that between 1987 and 1998, about 21 million pounds of chlorpyrifos were used annually in the United States. 21 million pounds of this chemical nerve agent being put on our food supply that then is brought in and not taken off, not gotten rid of, just put into the products and into the grocery stores. So in experiments, we have human studies. This is off Wikipedia too. Children with prenatal exposures to chlorpyrifos have been shown to have lower IQs. They've also been shown to have a higher chance of developing autism, attention deficit problems, and developmental disorders. Down here on animal experiments, in experiments with rats, early short-term low-dose exposure to chlorpyrifos resulted in lasting neurological changes with larger effects on emotional processing and cognition than on motor skills. Such rats exhibited behaviors consistent with depression and reduced anxiety. In rats, low-level exposure during development has its greatest neurotoxic effects during the period in which sex differences in the brain develop. So, and additionally, it says exposure leads to reductions or reversals of normal gender differences. Exposure to low levels of chlorpyrifos early in rat life or as adults also affects metabolism and body weight. These rats show increased body weight as well as changes in liver function and chemical indicators similar to prediabetes, like associated with changes to the cyclic AMP system, which goes into many more things. The point is, this is a terrible chemical to have on our food supply, and it was done for so many years. It was allowed to be in our food supply for so many years because there was a test that was misinterpreted. And in fact, this woman, Leanne Shepard, she's a professor of environmental and occupational health sciences in Seattle, and has a PhD in biostatistics. And so she started some research into this, and this was in an article, says June 30th, 2021. So Leanne Shepard was sitting in her office on a Friday afternoon when a colleague approached her with an old study on the safety of chlorpyrifos. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the Environmental Protection Agency had used the study to set a safety level for the exposure to the pesticide, which is widely used on fruits and vegetables. But when Shepard, a professor and biostatistician at the University of Washington, looked at the original research that was the basis for the paper and the safety thresholds, that were calculated from it, she realized that the underlying data did not support its conclusion. She says, I tried to reproduce their analysis and I couldn't. She said of the study, which was commissioned by Dow Chemical, the maker of Chlorpyrifos, in the late 1960s. So when I'm not going to read the entire article, I'll post it in the link, but what she realized is that the middle dose group, which is the one that mattered for the no effects level, they had conveniently left out one of the 2 baseline measurement days. So they left out one of the major days. The outrageous thing was that the group they declared as no effects was only that because they left out the data from their analysis. In a peer-reviewed paper published in October 2020, Shepard and her colleagues concluded that the omission of valid data without justification was a form of data falsification, and in actuality, there wasn't a safe level whatsoever at all, and it was left out of the paper. But that's really what allowed the EPA to then make that chemical okay to be used on our food supply for the last, what's it been, 30, 50 years. So this is a big deal because it's been banned now. It's going to be phased out. But now I want to show you something that's amazing. Okay, it just so happened I had found this study, but then all this stuff had come to the point of being banned just lately. But forever throughout history, people always had fermented things in their diet. So we're going to go to this study, and this is called Biodegradation of Chlorpyrifos by lactic acid bacteria during kimchi fermentation. Okay, let's take the abstract. We examined the role of microorganisms in the degradation of the organophosphorus insecticide Chlorpyrifos during kimchi fermentation. During the fermentation of kimchi, 30 milligrams of Chlorpyrifos was added to that fermentation, and its stability assayed during fermentation. Chlorpyrifos was degraded rapidly until day 3. 83.3% of the Chlorpyrifos that they added into that fermentation was completely degraded by day 3, and degraded completely 100% by day 9. 4 Chlorpyrifos degrading lactic acid bacteria were isolated from the kimchi fermentation in the presence of Chlorpyrifos and were identified, and then they go on and identify them. But this is saying that this toxic chemical, when added into a fermentation, or when a fermentation could be added into it, completely degraded it to nothing 9 days into it. So this is an amazing thing, because if it does that to that toxic chemical, it's probably going to do that to many, many more. And I'm going to bring up a lot of other studies and things. But let's compare that with putting it in your body and eating it on a daily basis as part of your diet. You know, kimchi was originally eaten by different cultures. Sauerkraut, same thing for a different culture. But when you add those things to your diet, it puts those probiotics into your body and creates a defense. It not only unleashes nutrients and unlocks nutrients for your body out of the nutrition of the food that you're eating, but it also spreads that energy to your body and purifies you, and helps to, much as sauna is claimed to help you detox. This is an instance where food is really your medicine, but you have to have that life-giving energy, the energy that is in the fermentation, the energy that happens that makes a probiotic, which means pro-life. And so therefore, the real way to get that is to make that yourself. And we're going to show a lot of that I'm going to go into how to make sauerkraut and how to add this to your diet. But this is one of the things that will make such a difference in everyone's health if you can purify yourself of toxins, purify any toxins on the food by adding a little bit of it to your diet and unlocking the nutrients so your body has the nutrition it needs. It's a magical property, a magical substance. I just wanted to show you that study. Again, complete biodegradation of Chlorpyrifos, which they've banned now for use residentially, for use anywhere, because of the issues that it causes. But if you can add probiotics, fermented products to your diet, just a little bit, you know, originally ketchup, mustard, pickles, sauerkraut, bread, originally cheese and wines were all this substance. And when you add just a little bit of it to your diet, it acts like a jump starter to not only your body but the other food you may have already eaten in the meal, and causes a fermentation to happen overnight in all of it, even while it's in your digestion. And so that spreads to your body and becomes your barrier, your strength for immunity, strengthens your immune system, and strengthens your nutrition. And that's what I want to get across, so that people can really begin to benefit and get off any of the toxins and toxic medicines that cause so many health problems, and begin to gain their health back and their mind back and their peace. And so hit the like button down below and also the subscribe button. We're going to explore many things in these areas, but I hope you found that study really interesting and magical, really, because that is a powerful pesticide that got completely wiped out in a kimchi fermentation. And kimchi is just cabbage, a certain type of cabbage. So it's much the same as making sauerkraut. I look forward to seeing you back, and I appreciate your support. Hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.